Hello,
Hi,
Kate.
Keryn. How are you?
Yes, I'm good, thank you. It's very late for you, I think.
11:30 p.m. here.
That's very late.
Yes, and we're in
Yeah.
the middle of a snowstorm that started just a few hours ago. So I'm just looking outside my window and it looks really pretty, but the drive tomorrow, it'll be a judgment call for sure.
Yeah. Happy to meet you.
So nice to meet you too.
Yeah.
I feel like we already kind of know each other. I know there's like we've kind of been back and forth.
Drew you to connect with me. I'm just curious.
So I listened to some of your podcast episodes. They actually popped up for me. And then the one thing, I mean, there's many things that I love about the website that you've curated and the business that you have and the brand and the person that you are. And that's that you are a connector. And I think in the world, especially that we live in today, we need more of that. We need more connectors. We need people that are willing to advocate for other people to get them into those rooms and building that sense of community. That's something that we are really, really missing in our world. Just a few years ago, I think it was Dr. Vivek Murthy that said we are in the middle of a loneliness epidemic. And so we are sorely, sorely missing that sense of community. For a lot of us, we're working from home, we're away from our colleagues. I know I certainly am. I teach exclusively online. So that disconnect piece for me is very much there unless I am building that community, within the college that I work with, staying connected to my friends and family and making new connections. And I'm very happy that we've connected. And again, I love those connections that you're making. Um, for us, it's across the pond, right?
Yeah, it
So.
is. Thank you. Actually, one of the connections that I made during um, COVID was with Brent Edwards, who lives in Canada. And, we've kept in touch, and his daughter's actually studied out in Australia. And unfortunately, we were away at the time. But, I wrote a book that you can't build relationships online, that you have to be in the same room and whatever. And I've had to eat my words about that. So I've had some awesome conversations with people since the online space has created more.
Absolutely. And I think
Mm.
COVID really helped us to sort of redefine what those connections can look like. I mean, face-to-face relationships are optimal. They're the best form of connection. But for people that aren't able to make those connections because of, 5 years ago, a global pandemic or mobility issues or whatever the case may be, this is the next best thing.
It is. It's quite amazing. We have neighbours who lived there for 26 years, and they've now moved to Queensland, and we can still catch up for a coffee and still stay in touch. It's not the same, but it's close to at least having connection. So tell me a little bit about you. Where did you get your interest in your field, and what drew you to it? And I'm always curious
So
why.
my background is actually in sociology. So I had a phenomenal first year sociology professor. Her name is Deanna Banky Cook, and she left quite an impression on me, so much so that I decided to switch my major from English to sociology. And I developed a real keen love for studying human behavior. I love the social psychology behind it. I love trying to understand why people do the things that they do, why they think the way that they think, why they choose to make the choices that they do. And then a number of years ago, I was working with a dear friend of mine and a colleague at the time. And her background is pretty much solely in psychology and specifically positive psychology. And she's been in the field for about 20 years. And this was just at the start of 2020, January 2020. So before we saw sort of the world change.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And she introduced me to the field, and I was teaching a course at the time through a program that offered community college courses to community members that would otherwise not have opportunities to pursue college. And they could take up to two, I think it was 2 or 3 free college credits that they could apply to post-secondary education. And positive psychology was one of those courses. And it couldn't have come at a better time for me because, again, the pandemic changed things so rapidly. And for many of us, even those of us who had, pretty strong, robust mental health during the pandemic, things changed so significantly that for a lot of us, we didn't have the tools in our toolkit to build resilience, to have those positive coping skills that could help us forge ahead. And even again, the change in our social connections and those dynamics, having to be separated from our loved ones, having to redefine what social connection looked like. And
Mm.
so while I was teaching the course, I was also learning so much about it, and I just fully immersed myself in the discipline, so much so that I was able to glean so much from it and build my own toolkit.
Yeah, and it's so actually, I was having coffee with another neighbour this morning, and we were talking about resilience and how there seems to be almost a lack of resilience in a lot of perhaps younger people in particular, and we were attributing it perhaps to lockdown and COVID, and perhaps people being a bit more sheltered and whatever. How do you would you agree?
Absolutely. I think it's changed the way that we see the world. I think it's changed our priorities. I think our priorities have definitely shifted. There's a really great visualization that I like to think about when we talk about resilience, and it's a French choreographer and dancer named Johann Bourgeois. And he has this really beautiful, it's about a minute and a half video clip, and it's him climbing a set of stairs. And with each step he takes 2 or 3 steps back, and then he'll ascend the staircase, take 5 more steps, and then descend it another 10 steps. And that's sort of a beautiful visualization of what resilience looks like. It's not linear.
No.
And I think the pressure to have it all figured out and to make the right decision at the right time is immense. And I think when you're younger, and this is maybe why we're seeing it again in younger generations, and it's so pronounced right now, is because they might feel that pressure to have it all figured out, and think that the journey, their career journey, the trajectory to get to where they want to be, and hitting all of those milestones, those goalposts that are associated with adulthood, like getting married, having children, graduating from post-secondary. That's not linear at all, right? But that's sort of the package that's sold to us by society, is that, you have to have it all figured out by the age of 25. And if you don't, you know,
I've never thought that way. I've always, as you've read my LinkedIn or whatever, I've meandered through careers and whatever. And when I look back, I can connect dots and things like that, and I can understand why I perhaps made the next decision. But even this year, certainty is, actually my post yesterday on Instagram. Nothing's forever, so you have to make the right decision at the right time. So it is a continuing journey, and I've been being prepared for that, being resilient enough to know that you get knocked down, but you can get back up again and take another path. Having
absolutely.
small grandchildren, I often think, we can't pick them up all the time. They have to learn that, yes, it hurts, but you will survive it and you can get on to something else. So,
And that's what helps to build our resilience is that, that fall. It's the bounce back from it. And that builds our resilience over time, knowing that, we've survived 100% of our worst days, and it's actually building our resilience. It's building our ability to cope positively with
mm,
rejection, with mistakes, with failures that we've made. And knowing as well that you can redefine yourself as many times as you want. You're never going to be the same person because you're constantly growing and changing day by day. I mean, that's the goal. Really, that's the
yes.
ultimate goal.
Yes, I remember at one stage when my children were growing up that in one period of time our son had hoped for a position in a sporting team, and he didn't get the position he wanted. And, he was concerned and disappointed. And I can remember my husband saying, I'd rather he had that knock now than when he's 29 and he's never faced a knock before, never had a rejection, that he's actually been able to pick himself up and move on. And I think that was really insightful and has proved, very true, that the next thing changes and you just can roll with the punches because you've experienced it before. Yeah.
And you can adapt to any situation. And that builds not just resilience, but it builds your sense of self-worth and your confidence, knowing that you have the fortitude, you have the tools, you have the resources,
Yes.
and that I mean, for some of us, we do have the social supports behind us. For others, we don't. So we have to sort of get ahead of the curve a little bit more and try to intellectualize those things and plan for them and prepare.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
before we're in those situations, grow and emerge a better person and a stronger person.
I was reading just recently about the link between self-worth and confidence. And being, if you sort of, I can do this, rather than shrinking away and thinking like this is not going to be for me or I can't manage it. Mm.
Yeah, and even the positive affirmations. I did a post yesterday. Every Wednesday I do a wellness post. And yesterday was on mantras and sort of those positive affirmations. And I was really inspired. Mel Robbins is somebody that I love her podcast. I follow her. I try to listen in as much as I can, and she has this high five habit, and it feels really unnatural when you're doing it because she encourages you to sort of give yourself a high five in the mirror every time you're doing something that is maybe out of your comfort zone, or just to reward yourself, to reinforce and validate that you're on the right path.
Mm.
And just like that high five in the mirror, the positive affirmations, saying them out loud, even thinking them, can feel really unnatural at the time, but they do serve to really validate and affirm your journey, right? And the path that you're
Yes.
on and the choices that you make every day. And
Yes.
that really can help to shore up our confidence and our sense of self every day.
So, what is the impact that you are aiming for and are most proud of that you have been able to contribute thus far?
It would probably have to be, so I'm a professor, as you know, and my students are some of my greatest sources of inspiration.
Yes.
I love seeing the path that they take. And for me, prior to COVID, when I was teaching in person, one of the greatest things that really affirmed the reason why I got into teaching in the first place is seeing your students walk across the stage as graduates. And that's sort of that full circle moment, remembering how nervous they were the first day of class, having them in class, teaching them, having them in subsequent classes. That's another great affirmation that you're on the right path as a professor, is if you're having students taking multiple classes that you're teaching.
Mm.
And them telling you a story of something that you shared in a lecture, or a guest speaker that you had, or activity that you did, or an assignment that they completed, that helped them understand a little bit more of who they were as a person. Um,
Yeah.
and again, building that sense of confidence for them. That was in particular very validating, is hearing those stories, but it was very validating for me in the program that I was teaching in a number of years ago. I don't teach into it anymore, but reaching marginalized communities that wouldn't otherwise have those opportunities to pursue post-secondary, teaching those particular students and seeing them build that sense of confidence after being told by themselves, or being told by a parent or a sibling or a teacher that this was not an option, that this option was always off the table, that they would never be a graduate. Seeing them redefine themselves and having the confidence to pursue those courses, knowing that they would eventually become college graduates, which for them was a dream that it seems so far away,
Mm.
so
Mm.
distant to them.
It's
So
such a
seeing them be
two,
able to sort of grasp that fruit.
sorry, it's such a two-way win, isn't it? Because I
It
used to be a
is.
primary school teacher,
Yes.
and now at the business community that I run, and I often put um, some of my business owners on the spot to speak at a dinner that I run, and they have to speak on a given theme for 6 minutes. And it's really pushing them out of their comfort zone in a lot of cases. We've had people that have never created a PowerPoint before, have never spoken to a room of 40 people before. And I had this sort of proud moment about, you've done it. You actually, I knew you could do it. And I knew that that would help you make the next step to whatever it is you're wanting to achieve. So, yeah,
And you
I
wear
can.
so many hats, right, as a teacher.
Mm,
You're not just sort of the sage on the stage, but you're also their cheerleader. You're giving them advice, you're trying to inspire them as much as you can, you're
mm.
trying to set them on the right path, but trying to do it as hands off as possible because you want them to make those decisions for themselves.
And that's the resilience thing too, isn't it? Is about, that they're capable of making those decisions, that they can do it and they don't need you to take control of everything for them. So,
It's important for them to make those mistakes, right? So that
mm,
they learn. Because if you're taking all the mistakes off the table for them, then they're really not building that resilience and those coping skills that they will need to take with them once they're finished
mm.
their academic studies and go into the workforce.
So you're also a board member for the Eva Rothwell Centre. What is the Eva Rothwell Centre about? Share it with the audience, and how does that fit in with your overall vision?
So the Ava Rothwell Center is a community hub in the heart of Hamilton, Ontario. And that hub serves a very large number of families and children and youth and teenagers, and they come to the center and they essentially it's sort of their second home. It's their home away from home. It's a place where they can take part in athletics, they can take part in extracurricular activities, they can learn, they can grow, they can develop, they can build life skills. It's also a food pantry for families that need to access if they're experiencing precarious or food insecurity or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons why I was drawn to the center is because I actually used to teach in the center. It was one of the areas that our programs ran out of. And so for me, it was just such a natural fit to join as a board member and take that extra step towards, asking myself, what can I do to help support my community that much more? I'm already supporting it as a professor, but at that point, I was operating solely out of the college, that particular college, and I wanted to be much more active within my community. And I felt like this, again, was just a natural fit to
Mm-hmm.
parlay my educational experiences because I do believe that education is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, game changer for individuals and to empower youth and teenagers with that recognition. I think will set them on a path that their opportunities will be endless for them.
So, who else is on the board and contributing their time and, been an opportunity for you to connect with and to build this community? What is everybody academic, or what's their backgrounds when they're involved?
So we have a plethora of different individuals from different backgrounds. We have accountants, we have other instructors, we have people that are in marketing, we have people that are mortgage brokers, lawyers, and so we're all coming within our different disciplines and sort of subject matter expertise, if you will. And I think that interdisciplinary lens really lends itself to best supporting families, given what their needs might be. I do have a friend and colleague that sits on the board with me. And so right now we're in the process of actually connecting with the executive director and building some programming for their staff around careers, but also positive psychology. So we've actually merged those two disciplines together. And then last year, I had connected with a local organization called the Bloom Red Project, and they provide period products for individuals throughout the community. And we decided that one of the communities that we were going to focus on last year was Hamilton, and the Ava Rothwell Center was gifted a very large donation from them that I helped to collaborate with them on. And so we were able to get those products to families who needed it most. So those are just, I think I've been on the board for a little over a year. And so just thinking about how I can support families and their kids as much as possible, and doing it in ways that are dynamic, but also each aligned with the expertise that each of us have that we can all bring to the table.
I often think when I talk about contributing that people go, oh, there she's going on about, donations again or something like that. And, when we talk about networking, I think, oh, yeah, we're going to events and we're swapping cards. And I say, you don't have to be at an event to network. You don't have to give money to contribute. You can give your wisdom and your expertise like your board is doing. And once again, as I said, you gain as much as you give from the satisfaction, I think, and the growth and fulfillment of being involved and knowing you're making a difference to even just one person can change their life forever. Right.
And sometimes just walking away from a conversation, right? I mean, for me, one of the things that I sort of live by, one of my values is I always want to leave a space better or improved than when I first entered it. Whether that be a conversation with one person, whether it be coming into a space and cleaning the area, whether it be, trying to offer programming, whatever it might be. I think if that's always our intention, if that's always our goal at the end of the day, then the relationships that we have with each other, that interconnection is so important. Coming back to that idea of community, it's not just an actual community, it's the community that you build
Yes,
um, amongst
yes,
yourselves.
yes, definitely. So going back to the resilience factor, and the title of this podcast is Rejection as Redirection and the Silver Lining of Setbacks. If you're a parent or you're talking to maybe someone in an office space and things aren't going the way that they would be hoping for, could you give us maybe 3 or 4 ways to handle a conversation like that?
Absolutely. I think the first piece that I would always come back to, and I remind my students, is that, we are all in this together. We're all experiencing life for the very first time. And for a lot of us, rejection is part of our common humanity. Somebody that I follow is a woman named Dr. Kristen Neff, and she talks a lot about self-compassion and the idea that very few of us talk to ourselves as we would a good friend, but what a game changer that would be if we did. So if a friend came to you and said, I applied for this job, I really wanted it, but I was rejected from it, how would you respond? And how is that different from what we tell ourselves after a rejection letter, right?
Mm,
Oftentimes it's a very different conversation. So trying to recognize that, again, we're all in this together. Can I exercise a little bit of self-compassion to myself and leaning into the emotions that we have, the disappointment, the sadness that's typically associated with being rejected, whatever that rejection might look like, whether it is a job offer or it's rejection from a friend or it's rejection from a loved one or a partner, is leaning into that emotion. What is that emotion trying to tell me? And that it's okay to feel that. Oftentimes we try to push those emotions that we label as negative right down to our core, and we just never address it. But it always surfaces. The body does keep score. So it's going to come up, it's going to surface again. So let's address it and let's figure out what we can do. The
mm,
best way to address rejection is always to try to intellectualize it, right? So getting ahead of it before it happens. So we have those tools in our toolkit that can help best support us. So common humanity, self-compassion, really, really important. The other piece that I think we need to remind ourselves about when it comes to rejection is that there's a really primal piece to rejection. Um, the reason why at our core we fear rejection is because our ancestors, if you were not part of a group, it literally meant your survival, right? So if you were rejected from the group, your survival, um,
It's
was
threatened.
definitely at
And
odds, right?
yes, yes,
Exactly, exactly. So everything meant being a part of a group, whether that be to help provide shelter, clothing, tools, food, water. If you are just sort of out on your own, you're having to contend with the elements. You're having to contend with predators. Obviously, that has changed. We're not running away from saber-toothed tigers anymore, but those perceived threats are still very much there. And so rejection still has that immediate impact on us. It's that sting of rejection we still fear very deeply, right?
absolutely.
Um, the other thing that I would talk about is with this hypothetical
Yes,
friend,
yes.
um, is the concept of something we talk about in positive psychology is post-traumatic growth. And it just like its name suggests, for a lot of us, rejection is a form of trauma, right? Depending on its roots, depending on its cause, depending on where it's coming from, how deeply it impacts us. But going back to that idea of, resilience, post-traumatic growth, is recognizing that while rejection can be profoundly painful to us, um, it can help us develop those positive coping mechanisms. It can sort of create us and mold us and shape us into a much more resilient, stronger individual. Going back to, my earlier point is we've survived 100% of our worst days, right? And we will go on to survive 100% more of our worst days. It's all about building those tools and building those mechanisms, having those in place, and having a great support system is really important. For some of us, that looks like family. For others, it looks like friends. For others, it's colleagues. For others, it's a combination of all of the above. So, really leaning into those connections that we have. And all of us have faced rejection. So, going to a parent, going to a sibling, going to a best friend, going to a colleague, going to your spouse and saying, I'm really struggling with this. And I'm looking for either someone to vent to, someone to give me advice, someone to make me laugh. What is what you need? Trying to identify the what do I need in this moment and communicating that to a person that you love and respect and that is going to support you through this really difficult time.
Yeah, that's really great advice, and I can take that on board myself, very much so. So sometimes I believe in synergy, and conversations come into your life for particular reasons. So thanks for sharing that. You've mentioned a toolkit. Is this actually a physical thing that you've mentioned a couple of times? Perhaps we'll start to wind up a little bit, but I'm really curious about your toolkit and how people perhaps could get in contact with you to learn more about it.
That's a great question. So, it sort of serves two purposes. The first thing that I love to do with my students is creating an actual worksheet. So, a lot of times people will tell you that journaling is a really great way to write down your ideas, and I'm absolutely on board with that. But sometimes when we're right in the midst of a really difficult situation, the last thing you want to do is pull out a book and write anything. You just kind of want to sit with your feelings, or maybe you don't want to sit with your feelings. You want to go for a walk, you want to go for a run, you want to cry, you want to sit on your couch and watch a funny movie, whatever it is that you need in that moment, that's great. But I am such a proponent of getting ahead of the curve. And so having an emergency worksheet that you prepare and you fill out for yourself that identifies all of the things that are going to bring you a sense of joy or contentment, or just going to help you feel at ease in a moment that you need it, is really, really important. So identifying what your triggers are, what you need to stay away from when you're in a really difficult situation is just as important as identifying what you need in a particular moment. What's going to make you feel good? Who are the people that you need to reach out to? Is it a trusted friend? Is it a parent? Is it a therapist? Maybe it's your family doctor. What does that look like? And having those things all filled out. I know there is a social work department in Buffalo that actually has a worksheet. That's a free worksheet that you can fill in online, and that's something that I use with my students. And it outlines all of those important things. And if you print it out, fill it in, and then just fold it up and carry it with you. Put it in your purse, put it in your wallet, or keep it in, a drawer at home so that when you do need it, you can access it. And then the second thing that you can do is you can actually build a physical toolkit. It doesn't have to be an actual toolkit that you walk around with, but it can definitely be, a makeup bag or just a small tote bag filled with things that are going to bring you a sense of joy. One of the things that really helps me and that I found has helped other people is something sour, something that you can actually put in your mouth and taste. And I know that seems like, oh, that seems kind of like, never heard of this before. And I hadn't either. But what it does is a really great grounding tool. So when you're feeling really anxious or when you're feeling really stressed out about a situation or when you're feeling, sad or fearful, and for a lot of us, we get caught up in those feelings and those emotions, and sometimes we add to the story because we're great storytellers. Having a grounding tool is really, really important. So having something that's sour that you put in your mouth, exactly. It's sort of like your taste buds are ignited
Yes.
and it's bringing you to the present moment because very often we're ruminating about the past or we're so forward thinking, we're worried about the future, that we're not living in the present moment. And so that little thing can
Mm.
actually activate your senses in such a way that's bringing you back to the present moment.
Yeah, that's great. I'm definitely going to remember that one. That's fabulous, fabulous. So just to finish off, if you were at one of my events, we might bring out the conversation starter cards, and just for a bit of fun, it helps us to develop a conversation. And the card that I have for you today is, what do you hope to do that you've never done before?
Oh, what a great question. Oh, let me think about this. What do I hope to do that I have never done before? Well, my guiding word is bold. And so I talk a lot about risk and rejection, but I think the one thing that I will do that I've never done before is maybe take more risks. I'm very risk averse. But I think with risk comes reward. And the worst thing that we can do is I don't think it's necessarily being rejected. I think it's missed opportunities. And so using that guiding word to really, sort of forge ahead and be willing to make the mistakes. I am a
Yes.
perfectionist. And so taking a little bit more risk, I think could be really good for me.
Fantastic, great advice, and yes, I think I always believe that if we step out of our comfort zone, we're sure to learn something about ourselves and others. So absolutely, for sure. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you, Kate?
So I've just actually launched my website. It is rootedinwellnesscanada.ca, and I would love to connect with you, any of your viewers that want to connect and learn a little bit more about positive psychology. They can check out my website, and then links to my LinkedIn and my Instagram are also available there, as well as a contact form. So if anyone just wants to chat, I'm a huge positive psychology enthusiast and happy to talk all things positive psychology related.
Fabulous, and I will put the details in the show notes as well. It's been absolutely fantastic having a conversation with you, and plenty to think about and to pursue in future conversations. Have you got a quote for me to finish off the session?
Oh, I love this question. I would say one of my favorite quotes is something that I actually just recently read last year by a woman named Jamie Kearns Lima. And in her book that I think she released it last year or the year before, she says you can listen to the no or you can listen to the knowing within yourself. And so every no that we receive can absolutely be a knockdown to us and our sense of self-worth and self-confidence. And I've definitely, my late teens, early 20s, if I heard a no, for me, it was so personalized and internalized that I thought, well, I should just give up. Right. But if we listen to every no, even though we know within ourselves that knowing, that gut feeling, that voice within all of us that we all have that's telling us to keep pursuing what you're pursuing, that is so much stronger than the no that we're hearing. And every no that you are hearing and that you're receiving is bringing you closer to a yes. So that's one of my favorite recent quotes is listen to the no or listen to the knowing.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Kate Dunn. Wonderful to connect with you.
So great talking to you, Keryn. Thank you so much.